Now we're shifting gears a bit to talk about another topic that is, I think, very important for us to be having a conversation on. And it has to do with our children, those especially who have varying disabilities. We know that there are various advocacy groups across Trinidad and Tobago who have taken up the issue of really advocating for better care and attention to be paid to children with disabilities. And one of the areas in which we have not really, I think, shone enough of a light on is with children whom have creative abilities, because far too often we focus on the disabilities. But what about those creative abilities? Are we giving them enough of a space? Are we allowing them the opportunity to grow those abilities and to really shine as they should? Well, to help me with that conversation, I'm joined by Quashiba La Fleur, who is the founder and CEO of WeCare Deaf Support Network. Good morning and welcome to AM Prime.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So this topic, I want to find out initially, you have decided to get into this space, all right, with the founding of the WeCare Deaf Support Network. How did that come about?
So I'm a parent of a deaf child. My eldest son is deaf. He's now 25 years old. And WeCare came about as a result of advocacy, advocating for, around that time, he was around 11, going on 12, and he was going to do SCA. A group of parents and myself decided to advocate for better schools because they were being placed in junior life centers when they sat the SCA exam. And we started advocating then. During the process of us doing the advocacy, I felt like we needed to do more. And I thought I would just form an NGO and we would start working and advocating on behalf of our deaf children. And it continued. We registered the organization in 2013 and it continues up to today.
And let me ask, from then till now, what kind of changes have you witnessed within the local environment, especially against the backdrop of your work as well as that of other persons in society?
So I would be proud to say many different things. I'd stick with about three.
Sure.
We were able to advocate along with other organizations. So besides me working with WeCare, I worked along other organizations and partner with, and through Caribbean Sign Language Center, we were able to get more persons to learn and be more interested in sign language. So we have a number of persons in our society now who are sign language literate. In advocating as well, during a process of that, I started working at the Association for the Hearing Impaired as the manager there. I was the executive officer for 3 years, and during my tenure, I ensured that we had sign language interpreters working at the association, which was a first-time thing for the association, and also lobbied for us to have sign language on the news, and that's what's happening now. So almost every news station or television station have sign language interpreters at signing on the newscast, and those are some of the things that would have been put in place because of our advocacy and what we do as parents and as persons who support people with disabilities.
Sure. And I came across an article that was speaking to where are our disabled but artistically abled children. And taking away from some of the points in that article, one of the things that stuck out at me was the fact that we do not have that integration of our children with disabilities into our formal education system in a seamless way. So we have to have specialized schools and persons. But is it at all a goal or a dream for us to have schools that function where it serves both children with regular abilities and so forth, as well as children with disabilities? Or is it important to have that distinction or that separation?
As a parent and an advocate, I would say it is important to have distinctions in some areas. Disabilities have varying levels, and based on the type of disability a child may have or the level that they're on, they can be integrated in society, in regular school as normal, as we would quote unquote normal work. However, there are particular types of disabilities, and I would use deafness as an example because my child is deaf. once a child is deaf, deaf children learn differently and they learn in their own language, which is sign language. Sign language is their first language. However, our academic and education system is English-based and it's not sign language-based. So it's important to have them learn in an environment that accommodates their needs, their learning style, in their pace. And we don't really have that in Trinidad. I know we have been, along with many others who are part of the disability arena and also advocates for deafness, they too have been lobbying for a change in curriculum and for different things to be added to our existing school system or education system to accommodate students with disabilities, especially those who are deaf, because deaf children without that ability to hear, like I said, signing is their first language, and integrating them in a school system that allows for English to be that first language where they learn, or allowing them to integrate. Yes, it's important to integrate them with children who are hearing. However, that can happen when we include children who are hearing in our deaf schools and not the other way around.
Yes.
But it's something that requires a lot of discussions, and I'm not sure if the discussions are around that type of integration. Because I haven't been in education discussions for almost 2 or 3 years now. So I'm not sure what the discussion is like, but those are things that separating children or having them learn in their own space is very important for their academic development.
Understood. And in such cases where we do have the distinction or them being able to operate in their own spaces, at what point do we see the integration or the socialization of our children with disabilities and our children who are without disabilities? Where does that occur?
Come on, set preschool. I mean, once a child starts going to school, it's important for them to socialize and integrate, because that's a different type of learning for them. So from onset, as they start school, once they're able to, from, like I was saying to one person, integration and socialization starts from home. And if we have children with disabilities in our families, we have to integrate them from there. We can't isolate our children and the rest of our family members or the community there in our society and expect that when they go to school, the schools accept this. We have to do that from the beginning.
Understood. Now, I saw a quote from you which says, children with disabilities are creative in ways we may not understand. I think what causes the lack of opportunities for them is that most of the time, people would not even think about a person with disabilities for a program or project. Why is that so? Is it that we have not been sufficiently exposed to persons with disabilities that we take away from it that we have to consider them moving forward?
I think most times it's a lack of not knowing or the fear of not understanding. Most of the times we fear the things that we don't understand. And I believe it's that area. And then some people just don't know or just don't even think about it. How many persons really think about a child with a disability when they're doing any type of program or project? Most of the times you have to include that as somebody who is into the arena. Or somebody else will inform you of, maybe we should include this because they probably would have read something or heard something. And, oh my gosh, you know what? We should include children with disabilities as part of this. So it's not something that is normally thought of or taught out, I think. And from experience, it is not. It's not something people usually think about, to include children with disabilities, especially in the creative arts industry, where we have so many young persons with disabilities, children and youths, who are very talented in all different aspects of creative and performing arts, but sometimes don't have the opportunity to express or to show their creative skills.
Yeah, and I want to really take a deep dive into that. But before I get to there, shouldn't then we have to have at the government level policy and legislation that really drives that push to integrate, to consider, to include persons with disabilities, children with disabilities in particular? Because I can imagine there are still many public spaces that are inaccessible to persons with disabilities, and we have not at the public sector undertook the kind of training necessary necessary so that if you want to have a person with a disability be independent, or to say that he or she grows up in Trinidad and Tobago where their disabilities are taken into consideration when they go to fill out a form at a government office, or they go to seek out care at the hospital, or so on. Shouldn't more be done at that level to drive this?
I think legislation and policies are very important. So yes, I would say that. But we also have to think of their other disabilities as well. And I think most times we talk about disabilities, people think of physical disabilities, and there are persons with disabilities that are not physical. And the opportunity for them to be integrated in society or be a part of programs or projects, it's a simpler process than having to restructure a building because it's with somebody who has a wheelchair or something. So yes, policies and legislations, that is very important, and I'm not going to say no at all. It's critical in our society. Yes. But I think more and more, because people are unaware and they do not know, and it's not on us as advocates, or it's not on anybody, it's just people just are unaware because they don't think about children or persons with disabilities because it's not in their face, so it's not something that they regularly operate in or around, that can have the challenge of them not being involved in stuff. But policies and legislations are extremely important to ensure that we have young people and children more integrated and a lot of other things in society. However, I believe like programs and projects are external of government. It's more like NGOs or youth groups and those things that do those programs and projects. And in that case, those persons in the communities and who are external of government can, include them, can think about them and have an opportunity for them to be a part of whatever they're doing as well.
Sure, but forgive me because I really want to have a proper takeaway from this. Whose responsibility do you see it as? Because the reality is, for a parent who has, quote unquote, a normal family structure, their children do not have disabilities and so forth, it does not occupy their mind. They may not have friends who have children and so forth. So really and truly, they don't interact with persons with disabilities or children with disabilities on a daily basis. But we can agree that it is important for them to start thinking about persons with disabilities and creating spaces or supporting, let's use that term, supporting the establishment of spaces and opportunities. But whose responsibility is it to educate those individuals? Should that education be taking place in the workplace? Should it be taking place in the schools? And who will be driving that education effort?
So the education starts from home, like I said before. So parents have a right to understand the disability of their child, and then they educate their family members, educate their communities, educate. That's where the education starts from. External of the home, organizations like mine and other disability organizations, we too have a right to continue the advocacy and continue that plight and helping persons understand disability, helping them understand, children with disabilities are children too, or they're people first, and their inability to do whatever we may think they can't do, it's unique to them, and we need to understand that as well. So it's part of our responsibility as advocacy groups and NGOs and organizations. It's also a part of the responsibilities, a part of government and private sector as well, because the reality is persons with disabilities exist within our society. I'm absolutely certain everybody working in your station, whatever community or area they live in, there is a person or more than one with a disability living in their community or area. Yes. They may not know or may never have paid attention to it. So it's part of all of us, our collective responsibility to not just raise awareness, but have people understand that persons with disabilities are people first and don't focus on their inability, but there are also abilities that they have that we may not see. So it's everybody's collective responsibility to share information, to advocate, to be more aware and understand that disability exists around us and it's nothing that we could like shy away from or pretend that doesn't exist.
Understood. So we're going to talk now about the creative side of things, because I would imagine that there may very well be parents out there who have a child with a disability, but have noticed that that child has some amazing abilities. That creative side is really shining through. How do we get to the point of the parent acknowledging that child's ability, that creative ability, and really honing those skills, enhancing it, supporting it, allowing it to flourish? What kinds of avenues are available, or what should that parent be thinking about?
I think, and this may be sounding like I'm just really back on parents, but first we have to understand our children. While we were doing I was doing the interview for the article, something came. I heard Glenn Niles say something. He said something at an event we attended recently, and he was saying his son was offered an opportunity, but he didn't think about it as that at the time. He was going to pass the opportunity on to somebody else. And the company insisted that they wanted his son. And in him allowing his son to go and do what they were asking him to do, his son was extremely well at it and led the way for other persons. And his son is Down syndrome. His son was able to pave the way for other persons with Down syndrome to have opportunities as well. I think as parents, and I agree with Glenn, sometimes we don't see the abilities in our children. We too limit them, and it starts from home, where we start exploring with our children. My deaf son loves music. He can't hear well, but he loves it. And he is extremely good in many different things. He's not a creative person in the sense of art, and you wouldn't see him dancing and performing. But you would swear he's an entertainer when he starts singing, and you can't understand nothing he's saying. So it's just, we as parents have to know our children and understand their abilities as well. And there are organizations that are out there who are willing to expose youths and children with disabilities to opportunities as well. Recently, we did a program with, it was a mental health project, and a couple of our youths with disabilities were part of that project. And it was fascinating when they did their art piece, their creative arts piece, and they wanted to be involved in the cultural aspect of it as well, when it comes to the performing arts. And they were allowed to be a part of everything that the team of youths were doing. And it was an amazing project that was hosted by the UN. That was an amazing project. And like, I'm with an organization now. They have a camp called Zante, and they open up that camp to a number of youths who are vulnerable in our society, who can have the opportunity to be a part of something which is cultural and creative arts as well. So there are organizations that can and do allow, there's just a few, I don't know many, who would allow them the opportunity to be a part of what they do.
And finally, because unfortunately time is running from us, but I want to find out about support for not just the parents directly, but organizations such as your own and others. I would imagine that there is a need for resources, and resources can be both financial as well as in-kind and human resources, persons coming out and supporting. What do you see as being the need or that deficit that exists, that those who are looking on right now on the program, who are listening in, can probably help to fill those gaps?
Support in what way? Because
so as I mentioned, in terms of resources and so forth, because your organization, I would imagine that it doesn't simply operate on goodwill. You do need certain things to continue to help you, to advocate and so forth. What are some of those needs, and how can we help to ensure that you all get through with the mandate for which you had been established?
Okay. So I think things like these, doing interviews like these helps a lot with many of the organizations, because advocacy and awareness is key. And we need more and more persons aware of many different areas of a child or a person with disabilities life. And funding, social, corporate Trinidad and Tobago can assist in many ways. Like for our organization, we are currently working at trying to get our head office up and running, but it's costing a lot of money. So I'm trying to source funding for that particular project at the time, because once we have our head office up and running, we can assist and support more persons and more parents of deaf and hard of hearing children. Volunteers are important as well, who are willing to work along with organizations to learn and to understand the needs of the organization, and then go and help us in advocating. And then you guys can help as well in just getting more information, learning more, and just sharing the information to the public. Because sometimes, based on recommendations, somebody would ask, do you know of somebody who work with children with disabilities? And somebody may say, okay, you could call Quashiba. Or, oh yes, I know of somebody from this particular network or organization, they may be able to help. And that word of mouth recommendation helps, and it goes a long way, because sometimes that word of mouth recommendation comes with a whole lot of resources that we need but didn't know how to access as well. So I think those are some of the avenues that we can use as resources or support to help us continue building our organization.
Understood.
Answer the question.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, at the end of the day, there's no right or wrong answer to it, because it's about how can we help you, and you've clearly identified ways in which we can help you. Now, if you want to get in contact with you, persons looking on, who something that you would have said to them, really struck a chord with them, and they say, let me get in contact with Quashiba and assist, how can they get in contact with you and your organization?
So the contact number is 774, or I should start with 1868 774-2864. That's our contact number. But we are also on Facebook and Instagram at WeCare Deaf Support Network. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram, so they can also text me at my name, Quashiba La Fleur. They can also contact me there. So the number again is 868-774-2864. They can contact us at that number at any time before 10 o'clock in the night. And definitely we can have a chat, and whatever support I can give or how I can assist, I would.
Excellent. Well, let me say thank you so much for taking your time this morning to help enlighten us. And I think that many people may not have necessarily been thinking that, there are spaces, or they should be pushing for our children with disabilities who have that creative ability to really find a space and a place in Trinidad and Tobago among their peers and outside. So thank you so much for coming and sharing with us this morning.
Thank you very much for having me and for saying my name correctly. I really do appreciate that.
No problem at all.